Hello, my name is Todd Stanley, and you are watching what my team and I are calling Expedition 4. As I announced last year on the website, this new Sylvanik area is where we are attempting to conduct a study of the species commonly referred to as Bigfoot. My team and I have been on over 30 expeditions into this region, and 2 by me have yielded significant close proximity contact with these animals. Although the first did not produce any photo or video evidence, it very nearly cost me my life. In fact, I'd have to say it was extremely fortunate, to say the least, that I even survived at all. We'll release the details of that expedition later this year. For this October 2010 expedition, although there certainly were significant dangers, including the grizzly bear confrontation, I suffered only minor injuries. So before I get into detail of the expedition itself, I'd like to thank Radium Police as well as Kimberly and Invermere Search and Rescue. This region of the Rocky Mountains is certainly some of the most dangerous backcountry in the continent. Very few people ever use these trails, and a high percentage that do disappear or are killed. This area between Kootenay and Banff National Parks is where wildlife officers relocate bears and mountain lions that have become dangerous to people. And because of the locations and natures of my expeditions, my team and I have always had an understanding to never call search and rescue. I rarely stay on the trail, and more often than not, I'm in areas that are inaccessible to most people. This time, however, the very unusual circumstances surrounding my disappearance led my team to assume the worst. So police were contacted, and a search and rescue mission was implemented. Now let's take a look at the videos and photos taken. I have to say I'm very pleased with them. For the video, I zoomed in 20 times optical and obviously had no tripod. I remained in this position for at least 20 minutes while the animal you see in video 4 moved from one position to the next. I was situated over 50 yards away and downhill from his position. I was hiding beneath a large pine tree and covered by my ghillie suit. The snow was melting, so I was having to switch back and forth from video camera to still camera as water would drop down onto the lenses. He would regularly disappear from my line of sight, as I'm sure he was searching for me in a direction of about 180 degrees. This animal certainly knew I was around, but I suspect that he had no idea how close I actually was. The specific details of what exactly happened that day will be explained in detail through a chronicle that'll be posted on the Sylvanik website as soon as I can. Just like the video 2 and video 3 chronicles, and hopefully I'll actually do a video like I did the video 3 reenactment, where it shows step by step exactly where my position was, the animals that I'm sure were around me relative to my position and what they were doing and why they were doing it, because most assuredly what they were doing, it was amazing how they had this spectacularly implemented plan to ensure that I didn't get into the spot I wanted. The day watcher had discovered me, and I became aware of it. Moments later, he disappeared, and I knew at that point that he'd alerted the main group. And I expected that, as in the past, these animals would simply move away. This group is entirely different from the previous group I was studying Sylvanik. Previously, they would become aware of us, they would simply move away, and really have virtually no interaction with us after that. This species, I would say, based on where they are, because the region that they inhabit is overlooking an area where hunters hunt and kill. They see men with guns all the time from their high points up in the mountains. They stand their ground. These guys don't back away, they don't run away, they stand their ground, and they push me out. This has been a big reality check for me. Like I said earlier, in the previous expedition that I was on last year in August, when I was tremendously successful, I lost my video camera because they actually threw stones and logs and branches at me to the point where it injured me, and a big male came back and intimidated me so dramatically that I actually felt lucky to get out of there alive. He was really, really intimidating. He stood his ground, and when I entirely submitted to him 100%, he backed off a little bit and let me leave their domicile. These guys stand their ground. It's entirely different from what I've been studying in the past, and it's a whole new thing. My group and I mean, after the first time it happened, it was pretty significant. This is the second time. These guys don't back away. In fact, what happened after, when I was trying to get back to roadside base camp, these guys followed me all the way out. I had an incident where I was trying to sleep in a tree and they were harassing me, shaking up the tree. I actually had to crack off a flare at them. I did have the camera rolling, but The camera that I was using for this expedition, although it takes very good daytime pictures, it's very poor at night. It needs high light to do anything. And then on my night back to what I call roadside base camp again, that night was on video a night I don't ever want to have to go through again. They were intimidating me, harassing me, and I was terrified. This behavior made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. It did seem like they were trying to move me in a certain direction. They were trying to get me back into the woods. I mean, I just had no intention of doing that. The road is where I was going. The road is where I wanted to go. There was nobody around, obviously. When that fiasco was transpiring, I had a flare lit and I was yelling and screaming at them at the top of my lungs. As you'll see, it was just very confusing to me, and I didn't understand at all. The behavior was just, it made absolutely no sense to me. Before I play this series of dramatic events, I want to make something very clear. I'm not proud of what happened. What you're seeing is not a man being randomly terrorized. These beings are attempting to impose their will on me, and it's a positive thing. Fortunately for me, they would succeed 2 days later with the help of a grizzly bear, which is a whole other story. But for now, watch, and I'll take you through these events step by step. Obviously, it was a very terrifying experience for me. Remember that this is after 5 days of less than 2 hours of sleep a night, and cold and hungry, and you know, I was in a different place. I usually am at the end of a successful expedition. This one was tremendously successful, but these animals were following me back. They were harassing me, again trying to impose their positive will upon me. And it was a hard lesson that I had to learn, and I'm very grateful for everything I've learned in the study of this species, and I'm grateful for, believe it or not, everything that this species has taught me, which is a tremendous amount. If nothing else, that miracles are an absolute reality. And in the past 7 years that I've been studying these animals, or the reality of this species, I've learned something very important, that I am a spiritual being having a physical existence or a physical experience. And perhaps if you want to discover that truth, then I would suggest you start studying not only what I've been studying with the First Nations people, but ironically enough, what the First Nations people have been teaching me is the same as what Andrew Carnegie had taught to people. And his modern day students that have descended from Andrew Carnegie's teachings, which he was a very wealthy, powerful, happy man. And his students today, people that I study, if you really want to learn more about this species and what the First Nations people have ultimately been trying to teach me, you can start with those great men that have made a tremendous difference. And so here it is. After sleeping less than 30 minutes, I was awakened by rocks that were thrown at me and growling sounds from multiple directions. After 2 nights of this, I'd had enough, so you'll see me here crack open one of my big flares.
Damn it. God damn it.
These growling sounds you hear are from 6 to 10 yards away, again in multiple directions. Now you can hear rocks thrown at me and various animals closing in on me from multiple positions.
Shit. Ah!
Here you can hear a large male walk within 4 yards of me, and after my screaming and shouting, walk the other way.
Fuck! Ah! God damn it. Fuck.
At this point, there are at least 6 of them, all of them positioned between me and the road.
God damn it. Ah!
They seem to be trying to push me back towards the mountains. Here, I turn to see a small male standing 3 yards away from me.
Fuck! Ah! Get!
He does slowly turn and walk away.
Fuck!
Everything gets quiet for a minute. Then I see a tall, slim male rise up from behind a boulder that was 4 yards away from me.
Fuck! Fuck! Get! God! Ah!
So frantically, I turned and moved back towards a tree.
Fuck. Hey.
The rocks and sticks and branches they threw at me really were very small. They were obviously not trying to injure me. Nothing was ever whipped at me. I mean, everything was thrown from a short distance. It's like they were just trying to get my attention. So there was, they were obviously trying not to hurt me. And when you throw little pebbles and sticks at a person like they were doing to me, I mean, obviously they meant me no harm whatsoever and ultimately really caused me no harm. So for that, I am obviously very grateful.
Fuck! Get!
I don't know if I could say this is probably the scariest point of the night, but this is where I'd really had enough. I am injured, I am hurt, I am tired, I am hungry, I am cold. At this point, this is where I see the biggest male I've ever seen. He is exceptionally tall, but more so, it's noticeably how wide he is. He's about 6 or 7 yards away from me. He is a huge, enormous male. What he does is he gives me a look, and he grabs hold of a tree, and here you can hear him shaking the tree.
Fuck. Fuck, I got enough. Fuck. God damn it. Fuck. God. Fuck. Fuck. What the fuck are you doing? Fuck. Get the fuck. What the fuck do you want? Get the fuck.
This is
out
the
of
only
here.
look I had at this big male.
Fuck.
Luckily for me, the only look I really wanted at him. And he took an enormous tree and shook it to the point where it was banging off the tree beside of it. So never saw anything do that before. I mean, that was tremendous power. He was doing it with one hand while he stood there, and a very intimidating sight, to say the least. To think that, I think if he would have latched onto that tree with both hands, he probably could have tore it right out of the ground. So this chain of events continues on for over 15 minutes until the flare goes out. Here's a warning for anyone that would seek to harm or kill these animals. Stay out of this region. We protect our own research site, and anyone caught carrying illegal firearms, especially in Banff and Kootenay National Parks, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And I promise you, if you choose to take on this species, we are the least of your worries.